There is a new era beginning for the Vancouver Canucks. Club legends, Hockey Hall of Famers, the Sedins twins are now co-presidents of hockey operations. And new general manager Ryan Johnson, the 13th GM in Canucks history. A little bit of a timeline before we give a reaction. Jim Rutherford is stepping away, which is why we have new co-GMs. And after the season ended, Patrick Allvin, I don't know if he was fired or separated mutually or whatever the case was.
Same thing.
But at the end of the day, Jim Rutherford is still part of the organization as more of an advisory governor type role. But officially a new era, club legends, a guy who's been in the organization in the front office for 14 years, I believe now, taking over.
And also a guy who was once the general manager of the Abbotsford Canucks, who led them to winning the Calder Cup a couple of years ago, or a season prior to this one. So when you're looking at it, you're looking at hires that with high pristine, I guess, like Sedins twins, legendary Canucks, Ryan Johnson, like you said, been in the organization for the longest time and has also done something with the organization
and was
as well.
a 2-year player for the Vancouver Canucks as well during the prominent era.
So you have hired 3 people that for the last decade hired 3 people that for the last decade, 2 decades have literally eat, breathe and slept Vancouver and the Vancouver Canucks. So in that sense, as fans, you're pretty pumped up just because it is a new era. And also, and just general reaction for me as a fan and obviously as a guy just reacting to it, I'm hyped because there's newcomers and there's people, the people coming in are going to look at things a different way. There's none of this old head stuff. Like at the end of the day, Jim Rutherford, legend, but he has passed his prime in terms of being a president or a GM. We all know that because his cup runs literally happened 10 and 20 years ago with Carolina in 2006 and Pittsburgh when they won back-to-back in 2016 and 2017. So with the Sedins, young guys, first time doing this, bringing in a different way, a different perspective to the job. Same with Ryan Johnson, where he himself said it that his journey to becoming the GM happened organically, where he paid his dues, he put all his effort in whatever role he was in, and it just got hired. And like how any CEO type of thing, where like they're just in the company and they just get hired within. So it's a good thing to look at just because you're not bringing a guy externally who needs to have an adjustment period to get used to an organization. I'm not saying that's a bad thing just because there's been a lot of teams that had success obviously hiring external guys. But at the same time, looking at first-time GMs and first-time presidents was huge for me just because you want to bring in a new way of thinking, which is this organization never had.
So, okay, I'm going to bring to that point. I'm going to I'm going to obviously react to what the current hires are, but I do want to bring up what I believe are fair criticisms, whether you agree with it or not. And I'm going to go one by one and I'll not like rapid fire, but we'll go back and forth with it. All right. So this is what I thought, and I've been seeing a lot of, because to your point, you want a new outlook of things. But the reality is, I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate because I do love the hires. I'm going to make that clear. I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate because I do agree with some of these sentiments. At the end of the day, those guys were within the organization as well, right? So yeah, it's a new view, but still we're in the organization. So criticism number one that because the other finalist for GM was Evan Gould, because this is my theory. Jim Rutherford first stepped back, I think, because he wanted Ryan Johnson from the beginning. Ownership did not want that because they wanted someone experienced, blah, blah, blah. By the way, I just want to make this clear. This was one of the most random, entertaining GM hires, now POHO hires we've ever witnessed.
Yeah.
It's just like one moment, Pierre Dorian's going to be, we want Ryan Johnson. Ownership does not want Ryan Johnson, wants someone experienced. Oh my God, Pierre Dorian's the guy? Supposedly Canuck Nation actually canceled that transaction, and now it became Evan Gould. It's so close. Oh no, next day it's going to be Ryan Johnson because ownership was cheap or whatever. But that was a timeline of events that we witnessed in the last month or so. But going back to the criticism thing, it is wanting a complete change, like gut everything. which is why people wanted, in this case, Evan Gold, because he would bring an outside point of view. And he would bring his own guys in. And he could give an honest assessment as well. So to that, I say it's a very fair criticism. And I do somewhat agree with it. I'll say that. I do somewhat agree with it. RJ still deserves it. At the end of the day, I'm not taking that away from him. But if I were to say, if that's a fair criticism, that's 100% of a fair criticism. Those people that are saying that they wanted a completely different point of view outside of this organization, what do you say to that? I do agree, and I do think it's fair.
It's fair to bring up, but my pushback to that is it's not like the Sedins were making decisions. It's not like Ryan Johnson was making decisions. Ryan Johnson showed that he could do well in his role, and then Sedins are obviously taking a big jump. We don't know what they are going to bring. So that's the main thing. If the point you brought up, and I know you're going to bring it up, is ownership, because they're the ones at the end of the day running it. Like that, the Sedins are answering to ownership. Johnson's answering to Sedins, who answer to the ownership. That's fair. But in terms of, if you're looking at just Sedins and Ryan Johnson just being in the organization and you're like, oh, nothing's going to change, I don't fully believe that. It's a fair thing to bring up. But if you're looking at just that aspect and the ownership letting them be in control, just because, especially Ryan Johnson, like the role that he was within, he's done good with that. He survived what? Now 3 managerial changes.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like he was brought in with Gillis and Smeal. He survived that. He survived Jim Benning. Now he survived Alvin and Jim Rutherford. Yeah.
So, okay. So I agree. Like I said, I'm 50. It's fair. We both agree with that part. I do agree with you on that part. Like, it's not like they were not the main decision makers. I'm saying like the part I do somewhat agree with is like you want a full reset. Like if you want to talk about full changes, gut it out. That part I do somewhat agree with, because you want a case like that.
That's fair.
Next criticism. New GMs tend to be quote unquote nerds. Like they have, like in this case, Evan Gold had a law degree. Prime example is Eric Tulsky. Essentially, like the guys that are successful now are the guys that are well educated and are not quote unquote hockey guys, like how the 3 of these guys are the hockey guys. Again, fair criticism. For this one, I would say that like, yeah, I do somewhat agree, because that's like, you're looking at the more successful teams that are kind of like that. But then at the end of the day, you look at a guy like Joe Sakic, right, hockey guy, and I'm going to bring him up even more. But it depends on what you surround them with as well. So obviously it was reported that we have one of the weaker research and development departments or analytical department. Like all the people that did interview externally were very shocked. Obviously the practice facility is another factor. That's more so for players. So in that sense, I do agree in that, like, okay, we need to fix that up. But it's a fair criticism, but I do disagree in the sense that like these guys can, and as long as ownership allows it, can overhaul that stuff.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you bring in nerds, like, but you're gonna need hockey guys as well.
Yeah.
Right? If you bring in, okay, nerds is obviously offensive, like smart geniuses.
It sounds offensive, but yeah.
It's just little geniuses, like, yeah, they could, negotiation skills, huge aspect of this, communication skills, leadership skills, obviously huge aspect to the job, as well as just managing numbers and salary cap and all that stuff, right? Massive parts of this job. But at the same time, how well versed are they in if they're just fully looking at that aspect, right? I'm not saying that like Tulsky or like Sonny Mehta, like they're just because they're all like, well educated and all this stuff doesn't mean that they don't know hockey.
You need to know how to lead.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you gotta know hockey, right? That's just how it is. Like you gotta be a hockey guy, right? So again, they might have, at the end of the day, in my opinion, they're showing a balance of both, because you gotta recognize talent, right? And then numbers and stats are not gonna show the whole story. They will show a part of the story. They will definitely help you understand what the player is. I do agree with that, but at the same time, you gotta look. The eye test is still very valid in today's game, and I don't think that's ever gonna change, just because you gotta look and recognize and see how a player is when you watch the actual game and how he's performing. Obviously, compared to the stats and stuff, all the genius stuff.
But still, we need to have a healthy balance.
But still, yeah, like, look, you gotta have a healthy balance. So obviously, that's where I'm saying, like, why is Carolina successful? Because I'm assuming they have a healthy balance of
Colorado,
both, right?
as well.
Colorado as well. Like Sakic's a hockey guy, but I'm pretty sure
they have a lot of good AGMs or certain departments
that are good with the analytics and all that stuff.
So
right?
like, again, so to pretty much what you said, what I said, like at the end of the day, like Joe Sakic is doing a great job there, and Yeah, and he's built a really good staff. That's what matters here. Like in the previous regime, that was the thing. You have quote unquote dinosaurs, as like what they call Rutherford and Alvin and them, and because they're not living with the new school with the analytics side of things. So there's that, and the last one you kind of alluded to it earlier. Again, fair criticism. Somewhat agree. Ownership didn't want to pay Gold because there's reported that it was an economic situation why Gold didn't happen. Evan Gold did not happen, and because of he wanted his new stuff, new staff, bring his own members in, upgrade the departments. Ownership is also paying out one of the Aquilinis, right? I think it's Paolo Aquilini. So money wise, they're tight in that sense, which is where there's a big concern with ownership because obviously I'll have to address that later. There's no salary cap in this stuff. You're a billionaire. You should be investing in all this stuff plus practice facility on that. But I do agree with the sense that it does feel like it is somewhat cheap out. If you really wanted your guy, you should have paid your guy. Because it was reported that ownership really liked Evan Gold and ownership wanted a new guy in there.
So that's at the end of the ownership is like the big caveat in this whole entire situation. Obviously, there's that point where they're cheaping out on an external hire. And like you said, if they really wanted them, they why not pay for them? And I'm not saying that this is the one ownership where like I won't give the benefit of the doubt. Like you said, if they really wanted them, they would have paid for them, right? But they didn't. So like in that case, it means they probably wanted Ryan Johnson more. But in that case, you're like, okay. But in the Canucks situation, you're like, the only reason they want Ryan Johnson more is just because
he's already internal and cheap.
And yeah, so that's where like you look at ownership. Okay, especially the Canucks ownership. Okay, that's where that's fair raising that point, 100% guaranteed. Another criticism I'm gonna have is that everything that the Sedins and Ryan Johnson said in their press conference, Trevor Linden wanted that stuff all to happen 10 years ago. Obviously, Aquilini blew that out of the water. So why not happen? Why won't that happen again? That's another big point.
We'll address that in a second here. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not like prospects. We're not prospect experts. We do keep an eye on the top ones, but we're not going to know second, third, fourth, fifth rounders, right? We're not going to know who the best AGMs, first-time AGMs are, or these scout guys and all that stuff. At the end of the day, like if it was Evan Gold, I heard a really good reputation about it. Like Pierre Dorian's a different story because we kind of knew about him a little bit. But with at least a guy like Evan Gold or a guy like Sonny Mehta and all these guys, we've heard positive stuff out of that to the point where like, okay, then we would have, at the end of the day, talk is cheap, actions matter more, right? And I loved everything what RJ and the Sedins said. At the end of the day, they acknowledged to themselves that his action speaks louder than words. But overall, that's what that situation ultimately is. And the other thing people are comparing is, oh, well, Trevor Linden did not work out as a POHO to a certain extent. Because one, to your point, ownership didn't let him go when he wanted to rebuild. But at the end of the day, and Linden's fault that he didn't really want to rebuild with the Sedins. That's a different argument too. The Sedins at least were in the organization because they came in. Obviously, they were tired. They said it themselves. They were tired as players, are Hockey Hall of Famers, Vancouver legends, point blank, not even just Canucks legends, Vancouver, BC legends. Then they became fans because they took a break. Then they came back in the front office role. They didn't like it too, not I want to say didn't like it, but preferred player development, which is ideally where I would love to keep them. But at the end of the day, it's the Sedins. And this is where my theory comes in of how RJ also became the general manager. I feel like once Jim Rutherford was like, I want RJ, and they said no, he's like, okay, it might be time for me to step away. They talked to the Sedins. Sedins accepted the job. And they care about the franchise clearly, which is why they took it. And they said, yeah, it's best what we want to do RJ to get RJ in after spending a day with Evan Gold as well. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not the same situation as Linden, in my opinion, because these guys played in different various roles. From players, yes, they're a club legend, same as Linden. There were players, same as Linden. But Linden came in straight as a POHO, I believe. These guys spent time in the organization, both Abbotsford and Vancouver, and is able to do that. So with all that being said, that was a criticism. They're all fair that I addressed. Like, I wouldn't have been opposed if Evan Gold was the guy and he built his stuff, because at the end of the day, he's done a good job learning under Don Sweeney in Boston. And Boston has been a really good franchise, even though people were against it because Jim Benning was from Boston, but a whole different situation there. At the end of the day, Ryan, just easy for the side. Ryan Johnson absolutely deserves this opportunity. If people say he does not, listen, I'm all for. I 100% agree with the approach that the Canucks took. You needed to do a full, proper research. And if Evan Gold outright won the job, then too bad, so sad, Ryan Johnson, you got beat. At the end of the day, as much as you deserve this opportunity. And in this case, you got the job. I'm fully on board with it. I'm not gonna be hypocritical because I did say when Patrick Allvin did get fired that they should promote Ryan Johnson because he's a smart guy. We saw what he did in Abbotsford. Players that he played under Abbotsford loved him. The NHL team was asking Max Hassan, Archie Baines, Linus Karlsson, how was your culture in Abbotsford this good? The answer was Ryan Johnson. So at the end of the day, he absolutely deserves it. Like you said, he went through from the player development to a various different front office roles to an AGM, plus a GM of a Calder Cup winning hockey club in Abbotsford Canucks. He's been in the Canucks for so long. It was Utica Comets and not Abbotsford Canucks as well. He was part of that whole relocation as well. And then on the Sedins side of things, listen, at the end of the day, these guys' reputation is hardest working on the ice, hardest working off the ice. Culture setters. The Canucks, what did they say? Even though Patrick Allvin was very surprised that we have a bad culture. Like, I don't know. Like, when the Ken Hughes press conference trade that happened, these guys fully addressed that, no, we need to fix this culture. It is shit. You cannot ask me 3 guys to personify Vancouver because they've been in it for so long that they know what this... So this is to your point now earlier that you made. By these guys make sense. The Sedins worked with RJ for the longest time, for the last couple of years, right? They were players together as teammates as well. And they know this market in and out. That's where Jim Rutherford, Patrick Allvin and them struggled, right? They did not understand this market at all. These guys understand this market. No offense to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Outside of them, like their bigger news right now is their whole what's going to happen with them. They're having a great season, and we're biased because our cousin is Jeevan Badwal, and we obviously talk about him off the camera a lot. But at the end of the day, a bad Canucks year, a mid Canucks year, overtakes the BC Lions, overtakes the Vancouver Warriors, overtakes the Vancouver Whitecaps, if they even have amazing years, right? Like, you agree with that.
Yeah,
like,
Canucks are the biggest thing.
The Canucks are the biggest thing in this market. It sucks, but that's the truth because NHL is a big league, and it's the club at the end of the day.
So things that, like, the reason why I'm so hopeful is the things they pointed out in the press conference. So, like you mentioned, the culture being one of them. Another thing is that, I mean, Aquilini said himself that it's going to be a rebuild.
No, his version of a rebuild could be 1 year. But,
but at the end of the day, like, when I don't think we hear him say that. Another thing that I think I believe Dan or Henrik or Daniel answered saying...
Still don't know who.
No, I know who they're who, but like,
I can't tell the difference by the face. That's what I'm saying.
No, but I mean, I could see one. I could see.
You can. I still can because to your point, I don't remember who said what in that case.
Well, I don't remember who answered it because But what I'm trying to say is that one of the favorite answers of the press conferences when they're asked about the rebuild process, they're like, the fastest way to rebuild this team is by
everybody for a second
is by going slow.
And like RJ initialized it, saying there's no timeline for it.
Exactly.
Whereas Rutherford in the past has said 2 years.
And another thing is that another huge thing is, which also is going to be part of the culture in the locker room, is community involvement, which has lacked a lot over the years, and obviously was very high when the Sedins came in. As they mentioned, that Brian Burke said that the Vancouver Canucks had the best community involvement in the NHL. They're trying to bring that back as well. And also, they already set their like core principles in like the first 90 seconds of the press conference, where they're what's called connected, committed, purpose, right? So that's obviously they made it clear in the first. Like, the one thing about the Canucks is that we never ever get clear answers for them, right? Especially when Rutherford, Allvin,
no, I think Allvin is not clear. Rutherford is just
super,
direct.
Super, right? This one was just like perfect in terms of what they want to do. Like, we understood in the first few minutes that like they want to change the culture. They want to answer the questions of who we are and why we do what we do,
and why that logo that we're wearing matters.
Exactly, and all that stuff without obviously giving away too much information. Like, they handled the Adam Foote question perfectly, just because they gave a neutral response. They're like, at the end they're still gonna evaluate it, but at the same time, you can't.
It was a tough year for him.
It was a tough year for him.
The task for Adam Foote, as much as we're gonna talk about him soon, is like, it was a tough year. He was tasked to win for Quinn, essentially, and make the playoffs, to all of a sudden we're full on rebuilding, right?
Yeah.
And like, listen, at the end of the day, we don't know how good each of these guys are going to be when it comes to the role. Now, co-presidents of hockey operations are not just, they're hockey Hall of Famers, first ballot, but they're legends in the city, they're legends in the game, they're legends of this franchise, their jerseys are in the rafters for a reason. On, off ice, greatest reputation ever. Led not just this team, but Team Sweden as well. There were Henrik Sedin was captain there as well. And then on the other flip side, you have Ryan Johnson, who's been in one organization in terms of executive, but as a player knows what this team, what this franchise is going to be. So because of that, you have the perfect guys to start setting up a proper culture, because at the end of the day, obviously ownership is still questionable, but from the top to bottom, we need to have a new culture set. And we have gotten to that. We have a great first step with who our leaders of hockey operations are. Ultimately, we're going to see what their staff is going to look like, who's going to stay, who's going to go, and how are they going to fix the analytics department and all that. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's going to be a wait and see moment, and we'll see how these guys do. But I do have, and I know you have, full faith in them. So ultimately, now we have to talk about what's next, because there's a lot of big moves, there's a lot of big steps coming up. And the big question now, outside of building their staff, is Adam Foote. Is he coming back, or is Manny Malhotra, for example, being promoted? Because RJ, Manny have a relationship. He was the Calder Cup winning head coach for them last year for the Abbotsford Canucks.
So obviously, to an extent, I was like fully fire Adam Foote and all that. And I'm still on that boat. Like, you got to move off of Adam Foote. But at the same time, I do feel for the guy as well. Like, all the points made for him about just being put in a tough spot and all that stuff, and just literally getting the script flipped just like that once Quinn Hughes got traded. It was a tough job for him to succeed, on top of that with like the goaltending injuries and the injuries that I had to face. So in that case, I'm like, yeah, I guess he deserves another chance, but at the same time, the hockey that we saw last year was absolutely garbage.
Yeah, and on top of that, okay, listen, by the time we're recording this, I don't know when this is coming out, similar to a Leafs video when we dropped it. Craig Berube got fired the day we dropped it. As of this recording on a Friday night, Adam Foote's still the Canucks head coach. By the time this comes out, it might be a whole different situation. But I'm gonna make that. But we're gonna make our point.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I do think he needs. I need to. If I'm making a decision, he needs to go, because even when there was a point where you knew that it was gonna be rebuild, there's no excuse for Zeev Buium not being first unit power play, for example, or certain players not playing, getting in, right? Not giving Evander. I get it. You were giving Evander Kane game 1,000. Sorry, but there were some moments where like, why is he even in this game? So on and so forth, and all that. So obviously, at the end of the day,
yeah, like there were definitely, like I said, there's definitely questionable coaching calls. Lineup deployment was probably the biggest issue that we had with Adam Foote this season. But at the same time, now when you're looking at candidates wise, obviously, kind of similar situation. Ryan Johnson, you're like, oh, is it going to be the GM promoting within? Similar situation with Manny Malhotra. The only difference with Malhotra is that his literal kid could be on the team.
maybe.
As well.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in a second.
And in my opinion, obviously,
the leverage
it should be one or the other. Like they both shouldn't be Vancouver Canucks. But at the same time, when you're looking at Manny Malhotra, I think that again, like Ryan Johnson, he deserves a head coaching job in the NHL, whether it be with the Canucks or the Leafs or wherever. But if they want him, like if they do believe that about Adam Foote in terms of that he deserves another fair chance, but that you want Manny Malhotra, you gotta fire Adam Foote and be ruthless and fire Adam Foote and bring in Manny Malhotra in this case.
Manny is gonna have leverage because clearly Toronto's in the mix, right? And he's from Ontario. Like there's a reason why he left the AGM position, assistant coach position with the Canucks to go the assistant coach with the Maple Leafs before he came back as the Abbotsford Canucks head coach. If you're talking about culture, obviously, and then on top of that continuation, you need to do this because you're already with that theme. Anyways, the Sedins have played with this guy. They said that in 2011, he was like that non-letter wearing captain, essentially, is the best way I could put it, because he was that important for them, vital for them. And when he came in for Abbotsford as well, as good as a job Jeremy Colleton did, who probably would have been the next head coach if he still was there, Manny Malhotra got the job done. And then if you want to criticize him for last year or this past season, sure, but at the end of the day, there was just so many injuries. He was losing players left, right, and center and playing ECHL players from the Kalamazoo Wings, I believe the team name is, right? So at the end of the day, he deserves an opportunity. yes, rebuild coaches do not last long. I get that, but you need to look at the Montreal Canadiens playbook. Marty St. Louis there with the team that's one game away as of this recording to getting to the conference finals to take on the Carolina Hurricanes. He was the guy from the start of the rebuild to determine you need to be that guy with Manny Malhotra, and we saw what he is able to do with the Abbotsford Canucks, who started off with a rough year that year and then went on a huge winning streak and obviously ultimately lifted the Calder Cup. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer because he's gonna get head coaching somewhere. You might as well. You don't want to be the team that's gonna it's similar to Ryan Johnson. Like you don't want to be the guy that loses Ryan Johnson and he succeeds somewhere else when he was in your shoes for the whole time. Like as much as would have felt bad. Again, I said it earlier. The right man should get the job. And then in Ryan Johnson's case, he did deserve it in my opinion. At the end of the day, but at the same thing with Manny, he needs to be the guy to at least start off this rebuild. And because I know he will be able to. Because some of the guys are going to be from Abbey, Max Hassan, Linus Karlsson, maybe Archie Baines will have a proper NHL opportunity because he's played under Manny before, and all the other guys that are going to be coming up, he knows some of the guys already. Plus, you any other young guy coming in, maybe his own kid as well, who's committed to BU. To be fair, it has to be Manny Malhotra at the end of the day. As much as I do feel bad for Adam Foote in that sense because the opportunity wasn't there, but he did not do himself any favors as well throughout the year, even with Quinn Hughes was there. Because it was not the same as Rick Tocchet at the end of the day. He's a very good assistant head coach. He's not a good head coach in the big leagues, especially because
as of this moment.
Yeah.
You can't conclude just because of this season as well.
True, but he was awful in the WHL.
That's fair as well.
That's the other thing.
All right, final big question for the Vancouver Canucks is that the lottery balls did not fall in their favor, and they ended up with the number 3 overall pick. And if it goes as expected, McKenna 1, Stenberg 2, there's definitely a lot of options at number 3, and one of them being Caleb Malhotra, as of right now, the number 1 center in the draft. But there's also a lot of other options, especially defenseman-wise, with Chase Reed, Keaton Verhoff, Carson Karls, and some other forward options.
Okay, I want to say a couple things here. It sucks that we lost the lottery, especially to Toronto. Right, like we know that in a year where we had tragedies like John Garrett and Jim Robson, and obviously Punch McLean now gone, having the worst year in a long time. You traded away your captain and best player in Quinn Hughes, and who was gonna be trending to the greatest defenseman of NHL in the Canucks history if he obviously ended up staying long term, but at least the most talented one at the end of the day. All that sucks. But the people that are saying that are like, oh, they see the tanking doesn't work. You were not picking 7th or 8th like every year, and obviously got lucky with someone
falling. Yeah,
right. But you're not playing the lottery game from the 7th to 10th pick. You're playing the lottery game as the worst team in the NHL. And yes, next year's draft might be in terms of more loaded, but at least top 3 picks is what you need. You need to have 1 year where you get the luck and get that Celebrini or get the Connor Bedard or the McDavid and all that.
Yeah.
You need that. Don't get me wrong. San Jose, at the end of the day, had 1 first-round pick, and it was the biggest one they had in Macklin Celebrini. Connor Bedard, Chicago got 1 first overall pick. It's Connor Bedard since obviously Kane. But I'm just saying in this recent stretch, they need to still figure their stuff out, but they're trending in the right direction now. You need to have top 3 picks. And in San Jose's case this year, they just were very lucky. That's all it was. So we'll find out how long this is going to be. But at the end of the day, you got a top 3 pick and you're getting a good player.
Long story short, you're getting a stud. Yeah. You're going to get a stud.
So that being said, at number 3 right now the win-lose situation for the Canucks was, at number 2 it's the San Jose Sharks. The lose situation is they're in your division, they're already loaded as it is, and they're going to get another stud, whether that be a forward or a defenseman. And right now, it's trending to be a defenseman, it looks like. And that's where the win part comes in. Because this draft at the beginning of the year was clearly McKenna, tank for McKenna, number 1, Keaton Verhoff, number 2. But it changed as the year went on to the point where even Stenberg took over as number 1. But it's supposed to be McKenna, Stenberg. And then you could kind of go half a tier below. Then you got guys like Verhoff and Chase Reed, who maybe even elevated Verhoff. Obviously, Caleb Malhotra elevated even more further, with Tynan Lawrence falling down as well. So at number 3, there's a legit case that one of McKenna, but more so likely Stenberg is going to fall to 3. And listen, I've heard even our own family saying this, but in general, they're tired of getting Swedes. But if number 3 is there, you're a rebuilding team. The luxury, somewhat Toronto, but San Jose has, they can draft for need to a certain extent, especially San Jose, which is why I'm not opposed to. I know you are like, they need to take Stenberg or whoever the best player available is going to be, but the legit chance that if they view Chase Reed as the same tier, they might take a defenseman there, which means the Canucks have their choice. And if you're the Canucks, you cannot draft for position. You draft the best guy available because you're going to be bad for 5 years. And if Ivar Stenberg is there, and he's granted, he's granted to be a top 2 guy in this draft, and he falls to you at 3, there's no debate about it. You do not take a center. You take Ivar Stenberg. You do not take a defenseman because you take Ivar Stenberg. Now, if Stenberg is taken at 2, one last thing, sorry, taking Stenberg at 2, then you take maybe a defenseman if he's the best guy available.
Now let's stop coping. Stenberg's going top 2. Let's just,
I genuinely think he might fall to
I don't know,
past 3.
bro. At the end of the day, there's 2 players that separated from the draft class. I don't care if San Jose have literally 12 forwards and 0 defensemen on the roster. You still take.
I agree.
Ivar Stenberg.
100% agree with you. Oh, because look at perfect example is the San Antonio Spurs. They drafted Dylan Harper with the 2nd overall pick last year when they already had Fox and Castle, and now Dylan Harper is having a really good playoffs, and they have a 3-man guard.
Well, bringing it back to hockey, I'm as a fan. There's no coping. None of this stuff is happening. No Hronek trade. None of this happening. The Canucks have number 3. 1 and 2 are gonna be McKenna and Stenberg. If the order flips off there, whatever. But the real question is it gonna be Caleb Malhotra? Is it gonna be Chase Reed and Veerhoff? Me personally, as of this moment, I'm leaning towards Chase Reed because 1, I do want Manny Malhotra as my coach, and I don't think we should draft Caleb if Manny Malhotra is our coach. But
a lot of awkwardness, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I'm leaning towards Chase Reed. He has been viewed as a great puck mover, and his advantage over Veerhoff is that he's a better skater as well.
Okay. We're not going to go too much into this. I genuinely do believe San Jose is taking a defenseman. That's my prediction. You could be 100% right too.
I'm not trying to cope with this.
I'm not saying that. Like you could be right. I agree with you that they should be taking Stenberg or McKenna at number 2. But there's obviously a legit opportunity the Canucks can take one of those wingers, and they should be taking one of those wingers.
Okay, now Stenberg's gone. Now who do you take?
I'm leaning Caleb. I kind of am because those guys are in the same tier from what I'm seeing. We're not prospects experts at the end of the day. So based on what I'm seeing, Caleb's range is big from 3 to 10. So this is where the argument comes in: do you trade down and get more assets and do that type of thing?
But you can't risk that just because of the.
You gotta get that. That's what I'm saying.
The Stenberg
San Jose situation. Because if McKenna really does go number 1, the draft starts at 2.
Potentially, yeah.
Right, and I'm seeing many mock drafts where we pass on Stenberg and he goes 4.
That's bad.
Right, like I'm legitimately seeing many mock drafts where he goes 4.
Those mock drafts are stupid.
I'm just saying.
There's
right?
no way he falls to 4.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying he's gonna be 3 now if the Sedins are there as well. But I lean Caleb, but then again, I'm not a draft expert at the end of the day. So if Chase Reed is the guy, I'll say this much: if Chase Reed is the guy, you take Chase Reed. If Keaton Veerhoff is the guy, you take Keaton Veerhoff. If you wholeheartedly believe Caleb Malhotra is the guy, you take Caleb Malhotra.
Basically, the conclusion of all of this stuff, and number 3 is that whoever you deem the best player available is, you take him. If it's magically a goaltender, you still take him, right? Obviously, it's not in this situation, but that's a spot we're in right now. No matter who it is, no matter what position it is, whoever you deem to be the best player available, you take.
I'm just saying, if Stenberg is there, obviously
that's the best player available.
I do not want to hear any excuses. Oh, another Swedish guy. He's legitimately a top guy. You build the team around him then to make it work, like Detroit did back in the day with Lidstrom and Zetterberg. Last thing I do want to say: do you anticipate big moves like a Jake DeBrusk, who is apparently reportedly doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, moved? Or I think I saw a thing where, you know how before Rutherford's like they don't want to move Hronek? There is a positive hope that Hronek could get moved, or at least they're looking to move him, assuming no move clause does get exercised. And obviously the big one is Elias Pettersson, where it seems like they're not too big fans of him because of they alluded to preparation again. But do you anticipate seeing some of these veterans with terms being moved?
Potentially, just because obviously they're, from what we have heard from the press conference, that they're bought in on this rebuild process.
So draft picks.
That obviously includes trading away veteran players on your team or players that don't fit your timeline as well. And DeBrusk doesn't fit the timeline. Hronek, talent is there. Obviously, he's coming off a good season.
You
but
want the Hronek for number 2 pick for sure.
Obviously, that's like a dream scenario, but that's
not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, right? And then Pettersson, it just contract-wise, like, how difficult is that move going to be? Also with the new no move clauses as well.
The other issue is like now, like back in the day when made Montreal successful and San Jose, they took on bad contracts. The problem with this year going forward is the cap is being risen by a lot again, which means that trading a quote unquote Brandon Gallagher or Patrick Laine or any of these long bad contracts, right? It's not going to be maybe worth the first round pick anymore.
Carey
because,
Price.
Yeah, like teams can stash them in their cap space for the most part. Or if they do want to get rid of it, like it's either like, okay, you want to first, screw it. We might as well just keep it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at the Canucks for taking, like Brandon Gallagher is the perfect guy I'm looking at because he'll help off the ice. He played for the Giants. I believe he's from here as well. And like guys like that are who the Canucks need to be going after in the offseason. Just 2-year contracts build. And the other thing is, yeah, in that case, yeah, it's gonna be tough, but you need to take on bad contracts, and then also sign guys like like a Taylor Hall, for example,
Yeah, like
or
sign-
whatever. Sign guys to maybe 2 years, but 1-year deals. Like, hey, you're gonna get an opportunity here. Build your case up. Have your chance at a big payday next year, and in the process, we'll also trade you to a contending team if you do that. We saw that kind of with Granlund, the year when he got traded from San Jose to Dallas last year.
The only
got a
issue
payday with Anaheim.
The only issue is that every time people come with us and we think that they're good trade deadline candidates, they tend to play like shit and make their value even worse.
But like, the logic,
obviously-
the logic is that.
Yeah, the
right?
logic is that obviously, and that's probably
That's how you're gonna get draft picks.
that's probably the best case scenario now, just because of the taking on bad contracts is going to be more tougher in terms of getting value from that. So
this free agency's
signing,
ass.
signing veteran players that hopefully you could bring your value up, and hopefully, I guess, in a situation where like your team is young and inexperienced and also not playing good, that like anyone you could be in that situation where is basically a guy that's a gold in a pile of shit.
Yeah.
Type of situation where teams just overpay for that and could help you out.
And generally, this free agency is not going to be good, right?
Yeah,
so
it's
you probably got to do 1-2-year deal contracts. Maybe bring back Blueger on a 1-year deal, and hopefully he brings his value up and and these guys do a better job than Alvin flipping him, right? So on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a long process. They acknowledge that. Hopefully that is true. Ownership allows that to happen. Canucks fans, it looks like we have a plan, but again, it's the initial press conference. People say the right things all the time. These guys do. At the same time, at least with these three gentlemen, the Sedins and Ryan Johnson, we at least believe it because they have the passion for this fan base. Two of them are legends here. One of them's just an executive legend, I guess you could say, in Ryan Johnson overall. But it's a bright day. It's a new day. Let's get going with this, and we'll see what ends up happening. So comment down below. Obviously, we are Canucks fans. That's why we elaborated a little bit more on this. But we dropped a Leafs one as well. Make sure you guys check out that video as well. Comment down below what other teams would you guys like for us to talk about in the offseason that have big question marks coming up. And once again, we just want to hear comments down below, Canucks fans. How excited are you for the future? Other than that, we're on the road to 300 subscribers. We appreciate everybody who has supported so far and subscribed. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Peace.